Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Dan, you want to do a sound check?
Can you hear me? Usually I don't need a microphone, but tonight we got the benefit of one, so I'm going to try to use it. If you have a problem at any time, just raise your hand and we'll try to be a little bit more articulate in our speech.
With me, I don't need a microphone either, but they're recording this tonight. My name is Rarchar Tortorello. I'm your Ward 5 City Councilman, and I've got one of my best friends, Stan Ward, who is leading the legal fights on behalf of Ward 5 against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. In my conversations with everyone in Ward 5, there's a lot of folks that aren't on social media, and this is one of those opportunities I'd like to take to kind of bring everyone up to speed on what has happened, next steps. So if you guys want to we have a microphone up here. We're going to run through our slides. We're going to discuss, and then we'll have a Q&A where you guys can come up and ask questions. And we don't have a clicker, so this is my clicker. The guy, and I want to thank Pastor Jason Myers, who's back there in the room, and his staff for allowing us to use their church tonight. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. You guys and like I said, he's my clicker, so when I do this, he knows what to do. So again, I'm Councilman Tortorello, and to my left is Stan Ward. We want to talk about a couple things here. So the agenda, Jason, there you go. So on the list of things to talk about, the QTAM lawsuits, what it is, the current status of communications between us and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, what we think the OTA will do or redo their meetings, and then we'll get on to the next steps, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So, what is a QTAM? You want to get this one, Stan?
A QTAM lawsuit is allowed by Oklahoma statute, and it allows citizens, just like we are in this room, to have a course of recovery. But there are a number of steps that have to be taken before you can pursue it as a QTAM action. First of all, you have to make a demand on the agency to collect any money unlawfully paid to a third party. You must give that agency the opportunity to take back the money improperly paid over. If it fails to do so, and you have at least 100 citizens who want to go forward with the QTAM suit, you then prosecute the action on behalf of the state, acting in essence as a private attorney general. We set out the call, as most of you know, asking for persons who wanted to be part of this QTAM action. The response was overwhelmingly positive. We more than exceeded our 100 people, and by the way, if you're successful, there are attorney fees and things that have to be paid by the agency that violates the law, and you get to participate in that financial recovery. QTAM actions are difficult, but we are making a demand on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to go after the money that they've paid over. For some of you, you probably don't know this, but in January and February of this year, over $69 million in contracts were let to engineering firms. Those proceeds, $69 million plus dollars, is a fair piece of change in anyone's book. The way the law is written, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority basically does not have to solicit competitive bids. Can you imagine that? Is there anyone that's a contractor in this room? Well, can you imagine just naming your price and not ever having to compete for the work? That's essentially, we've given the OTA an open checkbook to go out and to contract with these engineering firms. 12 engineering firms received not to exceed $5 million each. One of those 12 not only got that $5 million, it got another $4.96 million and another $2 million. So when you add those numbers up, that's a lot of pre-engineering work. I saw a piece that I read late this evening. It told me that, well, they thought that was a real bargain because they could put the work out there and get this work done. Once again, hopefully we get it all done before we are able to react. And so that's where we are with the key TAM action. We are not quite ready to go forward with it. There are a number of steps that have to be taken, but we've taken step one because we're serious about recouping any proceeds that have been wrongfully paid over to third parties. It's another arrow in our quiver. And we want to be sure that we can essentially utilize every weapon that we have in a lawful manner to stop this land grab insanity. And I call it insanity because it came about in such a manner that no one in this room was to be made knowledgeable about what they were doing until it was too late to protest. At least that was the game plan. And I'll just add, but then I'll turn it back over to you, Rarchar, that we found out that the governor was going to roll out the Access Oklahoma plan on February 22. We found that out as part of our discovery. He didn't tell the public that he was going to do that, nor did the agenda tell the public that that was what was going to happen. As a matter of fact, no one even knew that Governor Stitt, who was an ex officio member of the OT, was going to even be at the meeting of February 22. He appeared under this generic item of director's report. So I would ask anyone in this room, does director's report clue you that the governor is going to come to this meeting and talk about rolling out a $5 billion 15-year plan? And I say $5 billion because that's just the principal. There's interest to be paid on that $5 billion because bonds come with interest. So any of you that's ever financed a home knows that you don't just pay the principal, you also have to pay the interest in order to retire your mortgage. So if you let out $5 billion, it's probably going to take close to about $8 or $9 billion to pay that money off. So they call it a $5 billion plan. There's a lot of fluff in that number. And so I think politicians, unfortunately, have a way of fluffing numbers, and that is a classic.
So with the Open Meetings Act lawsuits, you know, we have alleged that OTA did not properly agendize their intents. When they put out the agendas for the January 25th and the February 22nd meeting, they didn't put it and state it in such a language that the average person could ascertain and understand what their intent was. And so through these depositions, we learned that they had no idea or didn't care, okay, you guys pick one, about informing the citizens of Ward 5, the city of Norman, or the city council. We were all caught off guard. So with the win, what this does, basically, they have two choices, to either appeal the lawsuit, the win, and for those that don't know, I'm going to back up a little bit. So Stan and our legal team put together the Open Meetings Act violations suit, basically alleging, and we showed cause, and we asked for a summary judgment, stating that we had enough evidence that we asked the Judge Olson, to go ahead and make a decision. And his decision, he invalidated both the 25 January meeting as well as the 22nd February meeting. And so where do they go from here? Okay, if history is any indication of what happened during the Fraternal Order of Police lawsuit against the city of Norman for improperly defunding the police during the 2020 budget cycle, the city council just went ahead and had the same meeting and made it the agenda item, and they had the meeting, they voted the same way. So what will the OTA do? We don't know. I don't think they said that they're going to appeal it. But if they don't appeal it, let's say they don't appeal it, and they went ahead and had those meetings over again, the importance of those meetings is that because of Judge Olson's ruling, it invalidated every decision that was made in those two meetings. Any appropriations that was made was invalidated, and that was in his opinion. So if they have the meeting over again, like the city council did, then they would have to properly agendize everything, including stating specifically that Ward 5 Turnpike coming between 72nd and 84th Street. What this allows us to do is Ward 5 will finally have a public voice and input during those proceedings, during those deliberations. City council, specifically myself representing Ward 5, that's most impacted by the Turnpike, will be on public record at these meetings stating what a horrible idea this is and all the impacts that we've been discussing since my March 3rd town hall. The water, the Garber-Wellington aquifer, the beauty, the animals, everything that we have grown to love in Ward 5, our way of life is at stake, okay? And because of that, yes, Vince?
I know questions later, but he also said they willfully.
Well, I'll get to that, bro.
Okay.
It's important, but thank you for jumping ahead, so. Vince, one of our great supporters. In fact, in this room here, we have a bunch of Turnpike warriors that have been working with this project here, gathering data, gathering evidence, doing presentations at the state capitol. And if it wasn't for the folks at Vince, Tassie, Greg Fitter, who else? Dave Moore. Who am I missing here? I said Tassie. She was the first one. She's our lead. She's our lead on this. If it wasn't for the hard work of these individuals who have worked with us, doing the research for us, we would never have come this far. So you have a lot of people working together basically to ensure that OTA is transparent in their deliberations. They should have been transparent from the beginning. But Judge Olson did say that, in his opinion, that OTA willfully violated the Open Meetings Act, okay? And the repercussions on that is that if they have their meetings again, they'll properly agendize their intent. We will be there to provide public comments. City Council will be there to provide public comments. And the hopes is that they will take that into consideration as they have their meetings over again here. And that's all we've asked for, the residents and the citizens of Ward 5, and I'm going to say of Norman because this also includes the east-west corridor or the east-west connector that runs on Indian Hills through Ward 6, 3, and 8 are also impacted as well. So representative government is important, not just to the city of Norman, the state of Oklahoma, but that's how things are done. And if they had contacted us during these deliberations of their intent, allowed us to have public comments, come to Norman, come to Ward 5, and listen to us before blindsiding us. You know, as Stan had made, he's got a colorful way of making comments and showing, but I think one of his comments was like they baked the cake with secret ingredients and they come to us asking what flavor topping we were wanting. You know, that's not the way things are done in Norman. And that's not the way things should be done, considering that they have the power, absolute power, and the threat of eminent domain. Okay, so we're talking about 441 parcels affected with a valuation of $72 million and $900,000 in ad valorem taxes. And my issue, my complaint, and which when I go back and talk to OTA in our conversations, is that they can't tell me with a straight face or facts or data or anything that we would trust in their words that, one, the ad valorem taxes will come back to us, but more importantly, the biggest concern for us on this stage and our warriors out here is that those individuals who are affected, will they receive enough compensation for them to start over anywhere else in Norman? And you know we have a housing shortage. We have a land shortage. So will they have enough going forward? And the answer is they don't know, but they're saying that they don't think so, which means we'll have at least out of those 441 parcels, and we are a caretaker generation nowadays, which means you're either living with your parents or they're living with you. Quite possibly, we're gonna see a mass exodus of people, citizens leaving Ward 5, leaving the city of Norman, going someplace else. And that is just unconscionable, and that's just something that we cannot allow to happen. We've given OTA different opportunities to look at different routes. For example, on the far east side of the lake, they looked at it before, and their comment back to us, Tassie, you were there, Vince, you were there, at the interim, Greg, was that it was just too much money for them to take that turnpike out. 7 miles, okay? A turnpike, according to their last estimate, and it'll be higher as they are delayed, is about $26 million a mile, okay? And putting it out on the east side of the lake where it has less impact would add to their bottom line. They have a job to do. I think their job is horrible for displacing this many people, but they can easily look at the total project and move it out to the east side of the lake. That's what we want them to at least consider. And so when we have those meetings over again and the public is invited to attend and give public comment, we want you guys to make those comments. Show them and let them know that there are alternatives. Not a straight line is not always the best way to get things done, considering how many houses will be impacted. $72 million is a lot of money in property if it ever goes to eminent domain. Stan often mentions the threats and duress of eminent domain, which has been echoed by Dave Moore, because he fought this 25 years ago, Dave. You want to raise your hand? So when ODOT tried this 25 years ago, he was part of that group that stopped him back then. And so he's working with us, giving up showing us his wisdom, giving us the information, and it's been a tremendous help with him and those folks that fought this once before and are here fighting with us today.
There's something I might point out, Rarchar, if I might.
Go ahead.
I believe for many people the question is not, will I be properly compensated? The question is, do they have the right to do this in the first place?
Amen.
Okay? Because all of our research has pretty much shown that the whole OTA toll road scheme for Cleveland County is a scam. It's not going to relieve traffic like they say it will. It's not going to bring this wonderful boom of economic development. And so what's it really for? Because if you're going to take private property in an eminent domain taking, there has to be justification for it. And as far as a lot of people can see, that doesn't exist.
Their justification doesn't mesh with our reality. That's the truth.
Yeah.
All right. I ran on private property rights, and that is sacrosanct here in Ward 5 in Norman, in Oklahoma, and in the nation. For an agency, I want to say they're private and they're public. They're in the middle someplace in that gray area there with eminent domain of power and authority with no recourse. If they were a state agency, we can request transparency. We can request an audit and open their books and show us their processes, show us everything that to make us feel better in this fight. But they have delayed and they have fought, they have lobbied against any audits. And so, you know, where we at today and where we want to go to tomorrow depends heavily on how much you want to fight. Do we want to take this, for the better word, to the mat? I think we should go as far as we could possibly go, because our houses, our way of life, the water supply, the wildlife, you wake up in the morning, you don't see smog, you don't see nothing but trees. Everything about Ward 5 is in jeopardy. And this is no different than any other fight. And we've gone this far. There's another lawsuit at the Supreme Court that hopefully one day, anytime soon, they will agree with us on the bond revenue project part of it. And if that does go in our favor, I think depending if it does go in our favor and what happens after that, there's a possibility that the citizens of Ward 5 in Norman in Oklahoma won against this gigantic mess of a machine, twice in less than 50 years. A lot of moving parts here, but you got a lot of people working for you. All we ask is that you give us the faith, the continued faith, to know that we're doing everything in our power, legally and legislatively, in our contacts that we've made at the state capitol, who are looking at the power of eminent domain and how we can reform it, for example. Representative Dam is looking at how can we reform the eminent domain laws. You have anything you want to add so far?
Well, I would just simply say that it's a long fight. We've won battles, the war's not over. So we just have to have perseverance and stay with it and pursue every remedy that we can pursue, because we've got a stubborn, well-financed opponent on the other side of this equation. Truly, it is the David versus Goliath group that's in this affray. So we know that to stay in the fight, we have to have a lot of perseverance. We have to just stay with it on a daily basis, because these people can go out and hire lawyers, consultants, and all these kinds of people using our money to do that. And so again, this is a gigantic organization. A lot of people don't know that the Turnpike Authority owes $2 billion. It has more outstanding debt than any other governmental agency in the state of Oklahoma. And why is that? Because not one turnpike bond has ever been paid off and retired. We have 11 turnpikes right now, and if you take the Gilcrease, and it could be 12.
Right.
So we have all of these turnpikes, and Wall Street says the following: we love you, Oklahoma, but we want collateral security. So if you're going to build a new turnpike with your history of only having 3 or 4 that actually pay for themselves, you must cross-collateralize all new turnpikes with all 11 revenue streams. Bear in mind, turnpikes are revenue bonds. And we basically have 2 kinds of bonds in Oklahoma: revenue bonds and general obligation bonds. That is a fundamental piece of knowledge that unfortunately people on the Turnpike Board did not know. But you should know that when you graduate from high school, quite frankly, because every time you go to the polls, it seems like someone wants to issue bonds, and it's usually school districts. So are you paying those bonds off with general obligation money, or are you paying them off with revenue? Normally, when you get into a school bond, it's general obligation. That means the taxpayers have to come up with the money to retire the bonds. If it's a revenue bond, it means that there is a stream of income that's committed to retire the debt. And in the event of a turnpike, it is the tolls that are paid to utilize those roads. But they have them cross-collateralized. And you ask yourself, well, what happens if we can't pay them? Well, the bondholders can then run your turnpikes. They can take them back. But the more likely scenario is they go whining and whimpering over to the state legislature, and the legislature would then do a bailout using general obligation tax dollars to pay off those bonds. So, quite frankly, there has never been the kind of audit that needs to be performed. I've met twice now with Attorney General-elect Gittner Drummond. He's an outstanding lawyer, and I think he'll be a tremendous breath of fresh air to have in the Capitol. And we're looking forward to him taking a fresh look at this entire issue of bonds and to demand accountability. And I think that we will see an audit forthcoming from our state auditor and inspector, and certainly assisted by our state attorney general. So I think things are looking on the upward spiral for us. So we have to just stay in this fight, persevere, and take it to them on every occasion that we can, because they're not sleeping. And of course, when they're not sleeping, we're not going to sleep. We're going to work harder than they do to get to the end of the road and to have this matter put to bed. Rarchar brought up this issue. They buy your property today. Does anyone know that about going out and buying a lot, hiring a contractor or maybe an architect and building the house? If you built it in 2 years, you'd be lucky. So with the history we've had recently, would you want to take today's dollars to build a house that's not going to be completed for 2 years? How do you deal with that problem? That is a major problem.
That is the problem.
So how are you going to deal with that? It's not just, well, I'm going to pay you what it's worth today. Well, that's great. But what about for my replacement cost? How am I going to replace what I have? Because I'm going to go have to locate the land, hire an architect or a designer, hire a general contractor, hope that he can get the materials delivered, because we've had a little shortage now here and there getting materials, and maybe 2 years later, with any luck, I've got my house and I'm back in it. Well, guys my age and gals, I'll tell you right now, you don't go down to the store and buy green bananas, and you don't go to the nursery and get trees that are less than 10 feet tall. So 2 years is a lifetime. I just hope, by the grace of God, that I'll be around in 2 years to say that we won this war and that we can now all rest a lot easier. Because when I drove into my driveway tonight, it was so clear I could see downtown, I could see the Devon Tower. If they put in what they want to see, I won't ever see the Devon Tower from my land in Noble, Oklahoma again. I'll be confined to some lot probably that has a view of some trees and maybe a lot less land than I've been able to acquire over the years. So it's a major, major issue for most everyone in this room, because for most people, the purchase of your home represents the largest asset that you'll ever own. That equity that you have in your home. So I would say that we're here because we're concerned. We're in this fight together. We know basically what our game plan is, and we are going to stick pretty close to it. And so hopefully at the end of the day, we'll all be happier. And I will say that we're trying to have a little social event sometimes in January, Rarchar, where all of you will be invited, and we hope to have a few sandwiches and chips and cokes and things of that nature, and to once again brief you on the progress and to answer your questions. So we're looking for the place to conduct this particular convocation, but hopefully we'll all stay together, because this project transcends political boundaries. We don't know Democrats or Republicans. We know people that are hurting because of the OTA. So we want to stay together, put the politics aside, and have this unified proposition that we want to stop this and stop it cold if we can. That's our goal, and that's what we're driving towards.
I think the nonpartisan part of it is what made this thing so strong going forward. We have indeed put aside our political leanings, and it is not Republican, Democrat, or Independent. It's us. It's humans. It's a humanitarian issue. You know, for the veterans here, you know that when we start a campaign, or those guys that were stationed in Vietnam, not my time, but my time is Saudi Arabia and Iraq, we saw the mission. We have the mission brief, and we have the personnel, and we know which way we want to go. I see no different. This campaign is exactly the same, is that we all have to stick together. This is the time. We had a win. We're waiting for another win, but we can't become complacent. Okay, we need you to support us, continue supporting us, And we're probably going to create a website for those that aren't on social media or Facebook, so you guys are informed on a weekly basis on what we are doing and how we need you to help. And at this point here, he's right. We've said this many times from day one, that this is a fight for our way of life. And we all have to work together to save each other's homes. The biggest issue, the number one complaint, is that delay in building and the cost, inflation, is causing people to worry that they may not have the same standard of living if this ever comes to the worst case scenario. And that's why we're fighting. That's why I'm fighting, is to make sure that it never comes, it never happens. We don't want to lose any more citizens because of a toll road. Again, they have no studies, nothing put out there to show a need for this road that divides Ward 5. And there's legislation out there that we're looking at that prohibits them, technically, from dividing a city. Now, Ward 5 may be out east, but it's still dividing the city. And so there are many fronts that we're looking at, and we're not done yet. We talked about the contacts we've made at the state capitol and how the Senate and the House are working together to make reforms on eminent domain. But one of the issues that we're looking at as well, parallel to what they're doing, is our own petition initiative or referendum petition. The easiest route is the referendum and working with the state legislature to have a change and make a change in the Constitution to the way eminent domain is used in situations like this. The city of Norman uses eminent domain for voter-approved projects. So every project that, I still vote against the use of eminent domain as a principle, but every project that the city has to come down to using it, it's all voter-approved. And the folks that are losing their property to eminent domain potentially should have a say in how that happens to them. And so our goal is to make the use of eminent domain harder and, more importantly, with the input of the citizens being affected. That should always be the case, and that's what the end game is to make sure that that law is changed either one way or the other to a petition signed by the majority of Oklahomans to get it on the next ballot, or using the legislature process to do it that way. It's just a matter of time and cost. And so right now, we ask, I thank you, we thank you for coming out tonight, and we plan to do more of these, every couple of weeks if things change. And like I said, you'll see the new website to keep you all informed. But this is a fight that we can't just become complacent and think that one win was good, and the second win is even better, because it's just the beginning of the battle. We're not done yet. We are far from seeing the end of this campaign. And so I'm going to open it up to Q&A. If you guys have any questions, come up to the microphone. Dave Moore is recording this for us tonight, so just come up, identify yourself. Don't be shy. I see you guys. There you go.
My name is Aubrey Washington, and my house is right in the path.
Is it working?
I may not be
What
on.
color is that? Just get close to it.
There it is.
I'm right. I think. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Aubrey Washington. My house is right in the path of the proposed turnpike. My question is the Norman City Council unanimous in its opposition to this, or is there any dissent there?
We are unanimous in the opposition to this. Everyone, we signed the resolution stating that we are all together against this, so that has not changed.
Thank you, Rarchar.
You're welcome, sir.
Lance Roadfoos, Vista Springs Estates. We're on the right-of-way, or in the right-of-way. At the risk of divulging your game plan, because I know this is a long war, we know I've heard of 2 lawsuits already. One of them is Open Meetings Act. The other one is the bond issuance. Those are hopeful opportunities to stall it, but not stop it. I wondered if you have any insights as to future lawsuits that might be more effective in stopping.
Well, we of course have the key TAM action that we're considering that I addressed earlier in the meeting. And what the initial plan was is hopefully we can win the Open Meeting Acts to put the brakes on this, and hopefully we can get a constitutional amendment or some legislation that will make it much more difficult to build these freeways without citizen input. We want to see the law that would be written in this type of a manner. All persons within 1 mile of the proposed turnpike should have a voice and a vote to determine whether they want the turnpike. And if it passes by a simple majority, you go forward with the turnpike. We don't just vest all that authority for, is this a public use in the OTA or some board down there that basically is a group of sycophants for 1 or 2 politicians. So we're hopeful we can take it out of their hands and put it back into the hands of we the people. It's not easy, and we know what the challenge is. I headed up and way back 30 years ago, the 640 drive to stop the income tax and all the taxes from being raised every year the legislature met. I was told we had no chance of passing it. We passed it in spades, and since that date, since 2002, there's never been a vote for a tax over a supermajority of 3/4. So the people can be heard, the people should be heard, and we hope to give the people the opportunity to be heard through our continuous legal actions.
So just to summarize, these 2 lawsuits, the Open Meetings Act lawsuit and the bond issuance lawsuits, are the 2 lawsuits that you're pursuing right now, and then you have bigger ambitions later on with the changing the law.
And just to remind you, we did win the Open Meetings Act
Right,
lawsuit.
right, I understand that, I understand that. That's part 1. There's part 2.
Right.
The Open Meetings Act, it's a punch in the mouth, but they can still backtrack and get back on track properly. And the bond issuance lawsuit has some promise as well. But those are the 2 that you're planning at this point. And then the 3rd act is sort of bigger issue, change the law.
Right. I think in our conversation, Stan, we had multiple strategies going forward, but the end goal was not only to stop this from happening, but to also change the law on the use of eminent domain.
Right.
Like I said, to make it harder.
Right.
And, you know, Greg, raise your hand. Tassie, raise your hand so people know. Vince, raise your hand. Look around the room here. Dave, raise your hand. These are the guys that are fighting right now and talking to the state legislators and making those alliances with us. And they are. We're seeing the tides changing when they're looking at what we are saying, because they're amazed at how Norman is fighting this and how, you know, why we're pursuing this. And it gives them hope because they've had turnpikes in their background that no one stood up to. Yeah. And so we are giving the state hope. We're giving people hope. And so we're seeing that tide change. Hopefully it stays the course, that the ultimate goal, like I said, is to stop this and to change the laws in the state of Oklahoma on the use of eminent domain.
All right. If you permit me, second question,
Yes.
and that is, you and I talked during election about Midwest City and Dell City and the water resources. Are they getting on board at all? Are they waking up in any way at all? And what do we need to do to change that?
You know, we need Midwest City and Dell City to understand the ramifications, that if this turnpike comes through, it impacts the water they get from the city of Norman. And, you know, they're watching this tonight because I think Dave's going to post this, and hopefully the transcript makes a statement that we need the municipalities around us to understand what they are going to be losing if this happens. And it's going to impact their water, okay, in many ways here. So it's to their best interest that they help us and join us in this fight here. You know, down the road, years from now, when we win, they probably won't care. They won't come back and shake our hands. But we know what we did. And so they're far removed from the problem. And so because of that mentality, that it's not in their backyard, that it's not my backyard mentality here, they just don't see the ramifications of their standing on the sideline seeing what happens. We would love to see Midwest City and Dell City part of this fight. because they have a lot to lose as well. And don't forget, Lake Thunderbird, major source of drinking water. The wells out here in Ward 5 and parts of Ward 6, major source of water for the city of Norman. And we just can't sit back thinking that OTA and their promises to us in our conversations, our private conversations, public conversations, that they will do their best to protect the water sources. And that's not true. If they're doing things in the dark, making decisions without input from the citizens and their representative, I can't trust them. Nobody, and you shouldn't trust them to say that they will protect our water and make sure it's not impaired going into future use. So no, we just got to stay the course. And that was a good question. Any other questions? Mrs. Saltzman.
I have a question.
No, come up. You can wait. Come on.
My name's Pam Post.
Hi, Pam.
My question was in regards to the routes and the bonds that Judge Olson today said was going to be heard at the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court rules in our favor that OTA is not able to get these bonds because of the routes being not in the statutes, or because of the all of it having to be in one bond indenture, what is OTA's recourse about going back in and trying to get those routes reinstated?
Good question, Stan.
Well, as you know, that's not the suit that I'm most familiar with, because
Right.
Rob Norman is the attorney for the PIKE group. I'll just say that we're working in tandem with PIKE because we have a common goal, and we certainly want to see them successful. The problem is, quite frankly, they're going to try all these type of remediation actions to go back to the legislature. And here we have a governor that orchestrated this Access Oklahoma plan. And governors can spread out a lot of favors. So there's going to be legislators that are going to be very close to the governor's shirt tails. So the question is, are we going to be able to even get enough votes out of the legislature to do a referendum petition, a referendum vote? If you have an initiative petition, that's expensive. It's time consuming, probably costs well over $1 million to do a successful initiative petition. So if I wanted to please my governor and I'm in the House or the Senate in Oklahoma City, I would vote against anything that would allow the people to have a say. And, I'm afraid that's going to be part of the resistance or the pushback that we'll see from our legislature. But we have some legislators that have been fighting for us really, really well. And I want to take the time to commend Senator Mary Boren. She has been a real champion in this matter, and she's very accessible.
She is.
And she's extraordinarily helpful, and she'll do everything that she can to help us in this cause as we continue to pursue it. And there are other legislators, Mr. Sterling, and we have all these people that are in our corner, but we have a lot of people that are beholden to the governors too. And so, remember, Governor Stitt wanted to keep this thing a secret until he rolled it out on February the 22nd. And he's caught us all by surprise. He delivered a real solar plexus blow to my wife and to me, just like the rest of you in this room, when you read in the paper that your property is going to be taken for some turnpike. And then we talk about air quality, we talk about water quality, we talk about the increased trash and the noise quality and the nuisance of a turnpike next to you. Can you imagine that? And the fumes that you're going to get off of diesel trucks, I'm sure they're all going to be electric by then, pulling all of the weight that they have to pull, and every 300 miles stop to get a recharge. But I don't think that we're looking at practical solutions necessarily from the gubernatorial office. He's into this fight. I think the governor wants to leave as his legacy the fact that he has increased the infrastructure, the roads and bridges of the state of Oklahoma, despite the fact that we have more toll roads per capita than any other state. We can be number 30 in education or wherever we are.
47.
47, but you know, in toll roads, we're really up there. And I'm sure that's something we'd all want to wear on our sleeve to be proud of. But that's what we're dealing with, and we're dealing with that political mentality, and so we're not going to get any help out of the governor's office. I think we're going to get some help out of the new attorney general. I think we'll get some help out of the state auditor. And I think there are other people that are in our corner, and we just need to continue to build this coalition. And that's what we're going to try to do.
We have been doing that, like I said. Any other questions, Deborah?
My name's Debbie Saltzman, and I understand that the council voted to oppose the Turnpike. And maybe I don't understand this correctly, or I'm just missing something, but it seems to me that the mayor is very pro-development, and I don't understand how you can be real pro-development and anti-turnpike. It seems like to me that those things don't mesh, and so I don't get that. And it makes me very trusting of that.
Have you spoken to him yet?
I
about
went in
that?
front of the council and, yeah, but, I did before he was elected. You know, what is that? Is there anything you can say to me about how those things mesh, or is that just as confusing to you as well?
I think to the average person, it would be confusing to have to say one thing and do something else. That would be very confusing.
Am I right that he's very pro-development?
I don't want to speak for the mayor. We just have to look at his actions and what he's said and done so far. I don't think it's proper for me to not speak for him and not have him here to defend himself.
Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just wanted to.
Let me answer the question.
Thank you.
There's an old saying in Oklahoma, if you ain't for me, you're agin me.
Yeah.
We all know. Look, we decided we're gonna write a book about all his sayings. I think with the years I've known Stan, I know we have a book with many pages of his sayings that over the years that he said to me. But in reality, I'm just speaking strictly for myself and the Ward 5 representative, is that I've been consistent in my position on the Turnpike. My position is that this is a horrible idea, and the end goal, they kind of leaked it to me, is that they want to build high-density housing in Ward 5. I was actually told, it's like, they're so familiar with me now, they call me by my first name, Rarchar. You know that we're 23,000 single-family, multi-family houses short Norman. Where do you think we're going to build all these houses? And they want to look at Ward 5. They want to build the schools, and build the neighborhoods out here. And what's going to happen is that, in 10 years, maybe 15 years, Ward 5 is going to be drastically different from what it is today. We're going to be in a concrete asphalt jungle. Conoco, McDonald's, lights out here. I mean, there are times when if it's cloudy and I'm going out with the dogs, I can't see a lick. It is dark. Now, can you imagine living these years, all this time, out in the country, potentially with light pollution, where you don't need a flashlight to walk in the dark anymore because it's all reflected from all the new development, the buildings, and I hope that this is a hard thing, because these conversations are the ones I have every day. My cell phone, if you want to look at it, I have 342 text messages. It's because I can't keep up with all the communication between myself and the Ward 5 residents and the citizens here. They just don't want this. The lifestyle out here and the way we live is in jeopardy of changing. Alameda, I live right off Alameda at 60th, in the big Howard Oaks edition, and you know that we found out at the very beginning that that off-ramp is gonna be there on Alameda and 72nd, between 72nd and 84th, which is probably why the bond for the road maintenance was renewed last year, unbeknownst to me, why they're widening Alameda. It's to handle all the traffic. And I think that is a crappy way of doing business, to not let the representative know the true intent of why they're doing it. You know, the roads need to be improved, they are bad out that way there, but why 4 lanes? Why now? Okay, it's too much of a coincidence, and if it's too much of a coincidence, we all know the saying, right? It's facts, you know, and so, again, speaking strictly for myself here, I will continue to do everything I can in my power to slow this down. And we have a tremendous team working together to make sure this happens. And we are far from finished. Like I said, the war has just begun. We'll win one battle at a time. I just ask that we don't lose faith, you know? Yes? Dave, you want to get to the microphone?
Yeah, sure. I hope this is appropriate, but I would like to address Debbie's question in that there's the whole notion of development has been perverted. Okay? Toll roads are anti-development. They're not pro-development, but we've got a Chamber of Commerce, we've got the Norman Economic Development Coalition, we've got the mayor, we've got all of these pressure groups that control stunning amounts of money. And they're convinced that this is pro-development. Actually, I think deep in their hearts, they don't care if it's pro-development at all. All they care about is developing the bank accounts of themselves and their buddies. That's the development that they want to see happen. Where are we going to put 300 homes in Norman? There's plenty of room over where I live. It doesn't have to happen smack down in the middle of Ward 5. But they use this phrase, development. And if you're not for the toll roads, you are anti-development. And so that's how they want to characterize people, and they've twisted the whole thing around. It's not what it's supposed to be. So if that makes any sense, I get a star on my chart or
I don't
something.
even know, but I'll address what he's saying. I'm 100%
You want to speak to the
for
microphone?
development, because over 15 years, I've been a contractor. I paint a lot of new homes. And
Yeah.
to be honest with you, I'd love to have 10,000 homes to paint for me and my son for the next year. But I don't, but I live right out here.
Right.
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 And,
I'm the same way,
yeah.
but not at the expense of everybody else. There's
And I was talking to
Yeah.
somebody earlier, I can remember when I was 10, 11, 12 years old and could ride your bike clear across Norman. I mean, we are a developing city, and we have been for 40 years that I can remember, since I was a little boy. And now, for the last over 15 years, I'm one of them guys, yeah, I don't mind development, I love development. But you're right, Norman has a lot of areas that we can still build. And I think builders are being more creative. I've got some now that aren't building big houses that spread out. They're building up, and I know there's a little more cost to that. But you have 6 2,000 square foot houses on one lot that used to have one house.
Right.
So in that, builders and you know, the people, I don't know why they can't figure out. Another question I have, because there's no transparency, why does it, you said 26 million per mile, why does it cost more to build on one side of the lake than the other? I don't understand that.
So right now, a straight line is cheaper because it doesn't have to go around curves and up hills and downhill. So going on the east side of the lake will add about 7 to 8 miles of road, which is what they don't want to do. To them, it's an added expense.
Well, if they had cut out some of that early money, they'd pay for that.
The real truth is they don't want to go through the tribe.
Right, exactly.
So the tribes have more importance than the rest of us in this room in terms of this priority. Now that's an old man telling you that. So I want you to understand something too, because you probably don't know how this works. This is the biggest scam since Madoff, and I don't know about this guy they're
Amen.
calling the mini Madoff. But here's what it happens. It's a circular type of a reaction. You have this project. Who are the first people that make all the money? It's these contracting engineering firms and the acquisition right-of-way boys. They make a bunch of money. Like I told you early on, it's 69 million right out of the chute for them. Now the next group that gets in on the gravy train are the local banks that do the interim financing. So do you think they finance for free? No, they charge interest and they make money. Now suppose they get it out of that interim financing stage and it goes to Wall Street. Well, you got to pay bond lawyers and bond consultants to prepare new documents. You take it to Wall Street and they discount the money before they give it back to you in Oklahoma to build your roads. There's money's now back in Oklahoma. You've paid a bunch of fees and charges. We need now permanent engineering work. So the engineers get to work again. Oh, well, now we need road contractors. They've got to get involved and make their money. And then we've got the people that run Caterpillar and Komatsu and all these heavy equipment boys, and they got to make their money. So the circle continues. And now who else is going to get on this gravy train? There's a couple more. And I'm going to tell you who they are. Oh, we took too much land. We got to declare it surplus. So we're now going to sell what we paid 100 cents on for about 40 cents on the dollar. And who's the buyers? The developers. They go in and buy the land at a song. Their Ponzi scheme never fails because all they have to do is issue another bond issue. Madoff and this guy that's down in the Bahamas or wherever he is in jail on this Bitcoin scam, theirs fails because they get to the point where they can't pay all the investors. In this room, we just continue to pay because they're using those same assets to refinance time after time after time. So there's a whole lot of people, but I've now left out the most important group. Who makes money? It's the politicians who get these contributions. Who do they get them from?
Contractors. Them developers.
So it is a scam deluxe that the public doesn't have any kind of a classic understanding of, and that's why they get away with it. So if we do nothing more than expose this little scheme, then we've done someone a service. And so I hope that we can take that as a lesson to say, you have been yelling about all the clothes, the beautiful clothes the king is wearing, but you know what? The king is butt naked. And so hopefully we can get down to the buck naked part as part of this whole deal to expose this thing for what it really is. So I really appreciate your turnout tonight to seek more information and to become informed, because informed citizens are real dangerous to those folks in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, we are.
And they are learning that firsthand. There's a sign-in sheet. I need you guys to sign it with your email address. And once we have that website built, I'll email every one of you guys, and you can join our mailing list officially. And we'll decide when we have the next live Q&A. You guys thought this was worth tonight, the visit to come out and see us tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. One more question real quick.
This is not a question, this is a comment about what I have seen the Turnpike can do, or the highway going through your area. My father, in southwest Oklahoma City, the highway went right by his house, over by the airport. You could not stand in front of his house and talk to anybody because of all the traffic that they had created. Noise-wise, it's terrible. We had to go around in the backyard to be able to talk to each other. And this is what it's going to create, is traffic, which we don't really want out here. I've been here for 50 years, and I know what it's like to be close to a turnpike of any type or a highway of any type. So anyway, it's just a comment. And besides that, one other comment. The one turnpike they built from Peebly Road back to the north just in the last, what, 4 or 5 years? You can count on your hands the number of cars in one day that go that turnpike. But they took over additions that was just built within that year. And people would come home and say, what are you doing surveying? I said, we're putting a turnpike through. And they did. That was it. So anyway, it's just a comment. And I thank you very much for having this.
Yes.
This is the first one I came to. And it was very informative. And so I will go back and tell the people around my area what y'all have come up with.
Thank you.
So I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this kind work.
Bye
Hey,
now.
I want to thank Pastor Jason back in the back for allowing us to use your place tonight for this. Thank you so much, sir. Before you guys leave, please police yourself. Pick up your trash and don't forget to sign in. The lady in the red sweater there has a sign list, and I'll be around here for like maybe another 15 minutes talking, answering personal questions. But thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.